IB Nation, welcome to the Irish Breakdown Podcast. We are live here on a Monday, which of course means this is Notre Dame Recruiting Hour and game week, of course. I know I woke up this morning, I was super pumped, ready to talk some ball because we're only a few days away from Notre Dame kicking their 2023 season off against Navy on Saturday. So, want everybody to get on cozy, get welcome to the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Smash that like button. Make sure you do that right now before I get too far into this show. We're going to be talking about high school football. Actually, this past week, we had several Notre Dame commits in the 2024 class that were fresh to start their 2023 season, so their senior seasons. And I had a piece that came out actually not late last night, midday yesterday, where I talked a lot about some of the key players in the 2024 class for Notre Dame and some of the starts that they got off to their season. So I wanted to highlight some of those football players because you know that on this show, I hope that this comes across really well to you guys. Because the one thing that I love to do, and this goes back to my NFL draft roots, is I love to highlight the backgrounds of football players a lot and really talk about the person behind the rankings, behind the offers. And that's why I love to have all these guests on the show. That's why I've had Jadon Blair's come on this show before. Carson Hobbs obviously is a regular on this show. We had Nate Roberts when he was committed to the University of Notre Dame on this show. Working back to the 2023 cycle, we had guys like Jaden Greathouse come on the show, Sullivan Absher, Sam Pendleton. We've had a lot of great guests over the last couple of years, and it's really because I like to highlight a lot of what these players are because I think we really emphasize what we see on Saturdays, what these players are doing on the field, the type of football player they are, physical traits, all that great stuff. But we don't really talk about the people enough, in my opinion. So I try to have as many interviews as possible. And of course, I want to highlight some of the results from this past weekend because there were several Notre Dame players, Notre Dame commits, that started this off on a great note, talking about the 2023 season. So we're going to work through that. I'm also going to work through the tight end board. As I kind of mentioned, having Nate Roberts on the show a little bit before, we know last week he decommitted from the University of Notre Dame. So I want to talk about the tight end board, what it looks like right now. And I really think there's kind of a 3-step process to keep an eye out for this 2025 tight end class for Notre Dame, which is still a very, very important class, even with Nate Roberts decommitting. And then we'll hit a mailbag at the end. I already have several question stars. If you guys can help me out, because I am solo today, obviously, here on a Monday. So if you guys can just put an MB in front of the question, please, it would save me a ton of time because I'm not only talking, I'm not only reading, I'm also have to navigate some questions at some point in the show as well. So MB is in the chat. Make sure you hit that like button. I think I already said that. But I'm ready to get going, folks. And if you are excited about the Notre Dame season, if you want to throw a Go Irish in the chat just for good measure, if you're live with me on Monday, go for it. Because I know I'm excited, super excited. We'll obviously be having the shows all week, just kind of quick updates. Every day will be 1 o'clock this week. We'll be able to really break down the Navy offense and defense for what we know, what this matchup needs, key players over the next few days. We'll do our mailbag on Friday as well. Brian talked about it last week, but usually what we have is the Friday had tended to be kind of a last keys to victory and kind of predicting some games and final scores, all that good stuff. That one's going to be kind of moved to a Thursday. So a lot of the prediction stuff is going to be on Thursday. So make sure to hit that notification bell as well on YouTube or any of your favorite podcast platforms. So you make sure that you stay up to date with what we're talking about each and every day. And of course, Saturday, we'll be having the post-game show as we always do. So excited to get into it, folks. Notre Dame football is right here in front of us, and it's been a long offseason. So excited for some football. Let's get down to some recruiting talk, though. Like I said, the first thing I wanted to talk about, and I had a article that came out yesterday. If you guys aren't a member of the Breakdown message board, you should make sure to go on there. It's boards@irishbreakdown.com. I think that we put out a lot of good content, if I do say so myself. And we've been putting out a lot of recruiting and team intel. And I put out this piece yesterday. This was kind of a recap of, and this is sort of what I'm going to be talking about throughout the majority of this show. But I wanted to do a little bit of a commit recap for the first week performers. Week 0 really got kicked off in a fantastic fashion. I think a great way to start this conversation, because this had a message board buzzing last night or yesterday evening. And I woke up to a lot of the chaos this morning. I think that we get a little bit hyperbolic, and sometimes, it's either one extreme or the other. Either a player sucks or is the greatest recruit that ever lived, and usually there's a little bit of middle ground, but we'll get into that, obviously. So I wanted to start us off with Charlotte, North Carolina Christian High School had their first game of the season. That is the home of 2024 wide receiver commit Micah Bell and Micah Gilbert. Micah Bell was a cornerback in the 2023 cycle. Please excuse me. Micah Gilbert and defensive end Bryce Young, also in the 2024 class. So this game, first and foremost, they played a pretty good high school in Myers Park. They beat them 40-37 in comeback fashion. I saw a lot of the highlights of this game. I wasn't able to watch this one live, but this was a really good football game. And Notre Dame got two big performances from a couple of future Notre Dame stars, some Irish stars. So this is the future of Notre Dame football. And I want to start us real quick with Micah Gilbert, who I thought he didn't have a crazy stat line, but I think when you saw some of his highlights and some of the plays that he made, I think you really just get kind of a deeper appreciation for the type of football player he is. So 6'2", 200 pounds, listed 205, depending where you look at. And honestly, first and foremost, I saw a clip of him just warming up. I'm like, that kid got bigger. He's probably 6'2.5", 6'3", right around, and he looked thicker as well. So, I mean, Micah Gilbert is a big wide receiver. And interesting enough, Charlotte Christian really used him as more of an underneath threat in this football game. You saw him win the screen game, running slides. He ended up with 5 catches for 65 yards in this game, but he did it a little bit of every way. So he caught like just a little hitch at one point, broke a couple tackles. His first reception of the game was actually where he came in motion and he ran just kind of a slide route into the flat. And he made a couple people miss, and he had like a 25-yard play, I think, on that one. He also caught a screen where he drug a couple people to be able to make some extra yardage. And then, yes, there was still a show on the Friday. Sorry, Cameron. My apologies if I misspoke on there. So Friday is the mailbag, as it is every single week. So yes, there will be a mailbag on Friday. So he also had one of the best catches of the week. Micah Gilbert was working on the sideline, and he jumped up and he pulled down this one-hand sick grab along the sideline. So although there weren't a ton of explosive plays, and 5 catches for 65 yards is still a really good game, but it's not necessarily like the eye-popping one. I mean, we're used to like stuff Jaden Greathouse would do, what Cam Williams was doing last season. But I think he really illustrated all the parts of his game that are so vital and so interesting. And one, it's the short to intermediate stuff. He's a really clean, efficient route runner, gets in and out of his breaks, and he's a big, sturdy frame with some great hands. So he was able to really showcase kind of his talents and showcase what I think makes him such an appealing wide receiver. So I think that Micah Gilbert got off to a really good start this past weekend. It was on Saturday, by the way. But, I mean, and again, this message board was buzzing a lot about Bryce Young, defensive end 2024 class. Of course, the son of former Notre Dame legend Bryant Young, as well as NFL Hall of Famer defensive lineman Bryant Young. And Bryce stole the show. He ended with 2 sacks, another tackle for loss, and a fumble recovery on the day. But if you watch the film, the thing that got you so excited, because Bryce had some numbers last year, folks. I mean, if you look at the production, he had like 90-something tackles playing the defensive end spot last year. Like, he was a productive football player. But you watched him on film as a sophomore and a junior, you're like, that's just a tall, gangly kid who hasn't really grown into his body yet. And we saw this offseason. I know Brian had been updating you guys on this a bunch because he had seen him in person at least once or twice. And his body just continues to grow. He now stands at 6'5" plus, 240 plus pounds. There's a chance that Bryce Young either ends up as a field end, which is formerly known as the big end in Notre Dame's defense, or he could be an interior player long term. I really think that he has that type of upside. So interesting player to watch because you saw a couple of his highlights from this game. One, kid looked like a freak show athletically. I mean, he was. Yes, yes. I'm sorry. I'm reading chat. Remember, folks, I'm also Ryan Solo, which means I'm reading chats at some point. So if you hear me talk to myself, remember two things. One, solo show. Two, ADHD. Just remember that, okay? So just want to put that one out in the universe. You guys continue to have conversations in the chat, though. But if you see me, my eyes wander at some points, just remember, it's a little hard to multitask sometimes, especially for me. First and foremost, this kid's massive, right? You talk about the frame that he has. He's added a lot of good weight to the frame. Really physically imposing football player at this point. But the thing that you wonder when a guy gains so much weight in the offseason is, will he be able to maintain the athleticism and keep the best parts of him? I mean, that's the thing that we loved about Bryce Young, even when he was a skinny guy, was that he moved really well, right? Even though it was a little awkward at times. And then you watch his film, you're like, the kid's moving exactly the same as what he was when he was much smaller, when he was probably right around 6'4" and 215 pounds. Now at 6'5", 240 plus pounds, the kid still moves incredibly well. You saw that twitch off the line of scrimmage. He was working mostly from a 3-point stance, but also he had a 2-point stance at sometimes, working from an upfield rush as a stand-up rusher, excuse me. And the explosiveness off the line of scrimmage was really nice. He's still physical. And I'll say this, technically speaking, it was a lot better than it was as a junior, but it's still developing. I don't think that technically he's that refined. He just is a really incredibly talented kid. I mean, at that size, there was one play I highlight, and I hope you guys saw this new feature that we have on the board. Make sure if you haven't, boards.irishbreakdown.com, if you are already signed up, or if you want to go sign up, I started this new feature. It's going to probably be every Monday morning, highlighting my 5 favorite plays, basically, from the high school commits from this past weekend. And one of them that I highlighted was Bryce Young not even making a tackle, not even making a sack. It was one play where he came out of a 3-point stance and he bent underneath an offensive tackle, showed a lot of bend in his hips and his weight. Sorry, not his waist. You don't want to bend at your waist. In his hips and his ankles to be able to go underneath this offensive tackle. And I watched that play and I'm like, look, he didn't make a sack. He probably counts as a hurry when you're keeping tabs at home. But that play for me was probably the most eye-popping play that I saw from Bryce Young this weekend. And there was a sack that I put as the number 1 play of the week. But that bend is something that I had not seen on tape before. He is a long-limbed, tall defensive end. And typically what those guys are a little bit lumbering. And not lumbering as in like they're not athletic, but lumbering as in their levers are really long. He's got long legs. It's hard to kind of change direction. But that bend was really, really impressive. And when I saw that, my mind kind of wandered a little bit, to be honest, because I thought I had a really good understanding of what Bryce Young could be as a football player. Because then the number 1 play of the week was Bryce Young. First of all, he was about to get down in a 3-point stance. The ball was snapped, so he wasn't able to get down in a 3. So he's rushing from a stand-up position, a little bit hunched over, and he works upfield, and he absolutely just tosses this offensive lineman, like just ragdolls him, and then basically changes direction, able to get him and get a big sack. It was probably like a 12-yard loss or something. It was a big loss of gain, big loss of yardage. And that's the type of stuff that I expect out of Bryce Young, to be physically imposing and just dominant. But seeing that bend, that was unique, guys. Like, that's different. So in my mind, I'm thinking tall, strong, kind of straight line player. But then he does stuff like that where you're like, this kid might be really good. And of course, I did put the clips up, Irish Gordy, and not, just so you know. If you go on that piece at boards.irishradio.com, I'll try to get it up here at some point because I actually think that would be kind of cool. But I mean, basically, I put up the piece and I just had hyperlinks. So you just have to click the link and then it pops up. I think you may have seen it, Irish Gordy, not. If you haven't, my apologies. But anyway, Up in the show right now. I got you. I got you. Let me see if I can do that. I think it would be kind of cool if I was able to, but let me just see kind of tangibly, logistically, if it makes sense for me to do it. If not, I could probably show it at some other time. So that stuff all together, because the size and the explosiveness is something that anybody could see, right? Like it doesn't take a strong eye for talent to be able to look at Bryce Young and be like, that dude is really big and moves really well. But then he dips and shows bend and able to change direction. And I think people took it a little too far on the board. It was a healthy conversation. So, like, definitely not calling anybody out because I understand why the mind goes this way. But, like, someone said, like, oh, better prospect than Keon Keeley. And, like, guys, like, I think what we need to understand is that Bryce Young took a great first step. If he shows off that skill set the entire year, I think we're looking at a top 100 player, maybe top 50 player potentially. But Keon Keeley was the number one player in the 2023 class, in my opinion. Like that dude is a 5-star every single year, no matter what. Like he is a stud, in my opinion. Doesn't mean that Bryce can't be a stud. But what I'm saying is that one game is not going to trump Keon Keeley because Keon Keeley is senior year, I think had like 17 sacks or something like that. Like he was just incredible the entire year, right? So let's just give Bryce a little bit more time. I think that it was an incredible first step. I left watching that football game and seeing all the highlights and saying that kid's probably going to be way better than I think he's going to be at the end of the day. I thought that it was a little bit of I would say a rushed take because like I understood it. But if that's who we're going to get in a Notre Dame uniform, then man, things are going to get really, really interesting for this 2024 recruiting class. Because as of right now, there's a couple people that have Bryce Young, pretty highly rated at this point, but no one has him as a top 100 player, for instance, right? If he vaults into that type of player, then I think the opinion on the defensive line class in 2024 should completely shift, right? Because Logan Thomas got off to a good start. We'll talk about him in a couple seconds as well. But what Bryce Young was able to do, I thought really, really kind of it made me get a deeper appreciation for the level of athlete he is. Because I already had a deep appreciation for the talent, but I think he might be even a little bit of a different athlete than what I had originally anticipated. So Micah Gilbert, Bryce Young for Charlotte Christian got off to a good start, 40-37 victory over Myers Park. Speaking of Charlotte, North Carolina Catholic tight end Jack Larson, his team took on South Mecklenburg, and they won by a margin of 49-16. Jack also made my top play of the week. He had 3 touchdown catches in this game. He had 4 total catches. I couldn't find the exact yardage of all 4 combined, but I know he had a 20-yard touchdown reception, a 14-yard touchdown reception, and a 12-yard touchdown reception. So on the 3 catches for touchdowns, he had 3 catches for 46 yards and 3 touchdowns in the victory. And what I really, really loved about Jack is I think that everything that we think that Jack was highlighted during this game. Incredibly instinctual, finds open space, really good hands, and great body control. Those things are evident. But I actually thought that Jack also, just kind of watching him run some routes, thought he looked a little bit quicker, a little bit more explosive, right? Like I really did. But at the end of the day, he is going to be able to make a lot of tough catches on the college level for the University of Notre Dame. Plucks the football effortlessly. I would put his hand strength up there with anybody in the class, and that's tight ends and wide receivers included. Jack Larson has a great pair of mitts, and he just really understands how to win through contact. So he got off to a great start. Again, Charlotte Catholic defeating South Mecklenburg 49-16. 3 touchdown catches for Jack Larson, 2024 tight end. A guy that I think we underrate a lot, but man, all the kid does is produce at the end of the day. Like there's a lot of football players that I feel like don't hit the eye test for everyone, but then you just watch him play and you're just like, but guys, he just keeps catching the football. He keeps scoring. Like he keeps making plays. And that's what I think of when I look at Jack Larson, is the kid just makes plays at the end of the day. So no, he's not going to be 6'5". He's not going to be 250 plus pounds, most likely. Maybe he will at some point. and he's probably not going to run a 4.5 40. But what he does as an all-around player just makes plays for a good school, playing good comp too in the state of North Carolina. Like, it's nice, like he's playing a bunch of nobodies, like the lowest classification North Carolina. Like, he's playing good comp too, and just keeps making plays. So I like Jack, man. Jack is a good football player. I do wish Notre Dame could have added a second tight end in the 2024 class to really make it a dynamic duo. But that's why we're talking about the second part of this show when we get to the tight end board, because Notre Dame still has a chance to get a couple really good tight ends in the 2025 class to continue the trend of tight end U. So Jack Larson off to a tremendous start in the 2023 season. I think if we're talking about offensive football players that are committed to the University of Notre Dame, probably the guy that I was most looking forward to seeing this season, because of things that I've heard, is Anthony Knapp out of Roswell, Georgia. They got up to a great start this season, 41-0 victory over Denmark. And if you followed that game, was not nearly as close to that final score indicates, which is pretty wild to say. They were winning 34-0 at halftime, and they kind of called off the dogs. Anthony Knapp, who's listed, depending on what recruiting service you're on, at 6'4" and 268 pounds or 265 pounds. I think that's what mostly people have him at. I put out a piece a couple weeks ago where strength and conditioning coach at Roswell had kind of given me some insight into Anthony, and he was up to 282 pounds at some point this offseason. He's been fluctuating between 275 and 282. So he'd been holding a lot more weight than what he had played at previously. And guys, I mean, I'll be very honest, man. Look, I still have some concerns. There's no doubt. But there's already a huddle video of Anthony Knapp from this past game. And I mean, dominance is the only word that you can really use to describe Anthony Knapp's first game. And again, playing against some pretty good competition for the most part. And I know he didn't play a great football team this weekend, but I mean, the guy's ragdolling dudes. And he also made my top 5 plays from this week. There was a play in particular. It was crazy because they were actually rotating him on both sides. I'm not exactly sure what the reason for that is, but he was playing left tackle. He was playing right tackle. He was playing kind of all over the place a little bit. And there was one play when he was at right tackle where they ran, I think they just ran like a stretch to the right side. And he had helped the guard next to him seal a defender to his inside shoulder, and he worked to the upfield shoulder. And there was I forget if it was an outside linebacker or a safety. I can't remember exactly what position the guy was playing, but he hit this kid on the second level, drove him to the sideline, and dumped him about 15 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Like, absolutely annihilated the kid. And on that film, you saw really good movement, both as in power, his ability to move players to the point of attack, and also his movement skills to work up laterally and to the second level. And he was absolutely burying dudes all game. I mean, I saw a video of Zeke Correll posted a video of him chugging a thing of Aunt Jemima syrup this morning and said he did it 4 years ago. And that's what I felt like Anthony Knapp should have been doing before that game, man. Like, it was just pancake after pancake. I'm excited to see him this year as well, because Roswell is going to play a lot of good programs this year. They're going to play better schools than obviously what they did this past weekend as well. But based upon the junior film from Anthony Knapp, my knowledge of that his body is gaining really good weight and what he started off with, I feel like I may have been way too low on Anthony Knapp to start this process. I think I was way too low on him. Because he just looked fluid, athletic. They had a couple of plays of him pass setting where he just looked so comfortable. And I had my questions of whether he's a guard, center, or tackle at the next level. I know Notre Dame, it sounds like is going to give him the opportunity to at least start at offensive tackle on the next level. But man, I mean, I watched him and I'm just like, I think he might be a tackle. He might be, even though I don't think his arms are incredibly long, even though I don't think he's the biggest guy in the world. He's just so comfortable navigating space, and he's so comfortable within his own skin. This kid kind of has an advanced feel of what his strengths are, what his weaknesses are, and how to compensate for those weaknesses. So Anthony Knapp got off to a great start, man. He looks like a legitimately good football player. I hope, and this is what I'm kind of moving to, is I think that I may have been too low on Anthony Knapp to start this process. I think I might have been way too low. And I think part of it was because everybody knows how I felt about Caleb Brewer in the 2024 class, a Pennsylvania offensive lineman who plays tight end for his high school. I think Caleb Brewer's a stud. And basically what happened was Notre Dame, as soon as Joe Rudolph came, said, Anthony Knapp's our guy. It's our guy. I want him to Notre Dame. And they basically just stopped recruiting Caleb Brewer. Harry Heastan loved Caleb. Joe Rudolph wasn't as big on Caleb Brewer. So looking at how things are trending, though, is that I'm not going to say that I think Anthony Knapp's better than Caleb Brewer. That's not what I think. But I think Joe Rudolph may have made a really good evaluation here, possibly. So I want to see how it trends over the next few weeks. I want to see him play against better competition, but I want to see him string together dominant performances like he did in this first game of the season, because it looked really good, man. It looked really good. So Anthony Knapp, big 41-0 victory over Denmark for Roswell High School this weekend. Another offensive lineman that I thought got off to a strong start was Hamilton Southeastern in Fishers, Indiana. Styles Prescott, 6'7", 6'6", depending who you look at, 270 plus pounds now listed. I have been told that he's actually up to over 280 pounds now. And I saw his film and he looked pretty filled out. Styles Prescott, first of all, they got a 28-14 victory, Hamilton Southeastern. They played against Carroll High School. And I watched a few of the highlights. He's another one of those kids that has a huddle highlight. I'll get to that question in a second, Jason, because I did want to highlight him. I didn't put it in the piece, but I think we should talk a little Deuce Knight here in a couple minutes as well. So Styles, first and foremost, he looked more filled out. Body looks good. Again, I heard he's over 280 pounds now after being about 260 something last year. So he's gained about 20 pounds in this offseason. I thought he looked good. I did. I think that he has good reactionary quickness. I think he's got pretty strong lower half. I think his upper body's still developing, but I think it's a work in progress, and I think it's got good stuff working through it. I still have my questions about him, though. I do. So, but he got off to a good start, and if he continues to build on it, I think that my columns will be remedied a little bit. But there's some tightness, I think, there. But we shall see. But Styles Prescott and his team got off to a 28-14 victory, and I thought his body looked more filled out and better as far as how it was progressing. So Styles Prescott, offensive lineman, a in-state product in the state of Indiana out of Hamilton Southeastern with a victory. I wanted to move on. I already hit on Bryce Young. Logan Thomas, who's now at Lakewood, Ohio, St. Edward. For people who don't know Ohio football too much, St. Edward's a very good team. Very good team. Two back-to-back state champions, in fact. So Logan played the last couple years in the state of Texas. He was in the Katy area. And basically, both his parents were from northeastern Ohio originally. So they had moved back up to Ohio for his senior year. I had put a little bit of an intel piece out there when I spoke to his coach. Obviously, St. Edward was very happy to have Logan Thomas come transfer to them because he's a really good football player. This is one that I watched very closely. They played Center Grove, who Center Grove is a very strong team in the state of Indiana. A lot of Ohio teams playing Indiana teams, by the way. I'll get into Carson Hobbs' game later as well. They played, though, Center Grove has a quarterback named Tyler Cherry, who's a very talented player that's going to Duke. I think he was like 17 for 23 or something like that in the football game. But I watched that game. And first and foremost, Logan Thomas looks longer than he was as a junior. He looks taller. I think he's legit 6'4", 4.5. He's got really long arms, looks the part of a defensive end. Looks like his body is still maturing. I'd say he's probably about 215, 220 pounds right now. That's my guess, just kind of looking at his body type as of right now. But, man, he was all over the place, guys. I think the great thing about what St. Edwards is going to do for him is when you look at him previously at his previous schools, he was asked to play in space a lot. They basically played him as a 3-4 outside linebacker, which is pretty compatible to a Viper position. but they had someone playing space a ton, playing coverage, set an edge, pass rush at times, basically do a little bit of everything. But what St. Edward's did was they said, Logan, you're playing defensive end and you're rushing the passer every play. And I thought that really fit his style well, man. Like he was getting after it. He had a sack, he had several hurries. I think he tipped the pass or two, had run stops. Logan Thomas looked really good, guys. Another one where I liked Logan from the get when he was offered, but I wasn't like in love with Logan, right? Like there were some other guys, like I think of like Malachi Williams that's now committed to Penn State. Like I prefer Malachi Williams, to be very honest. But Logan Thomas is another guy that Notre Dame circled in on, and they were like, that's our guy very early on in the process. And another one that I think is a hit. It looks like it so far anyway, after game one. He went and played against a really good team in Center Grove, and he dominated. So Logan Thomas was absolutely fantastic in his first game for St. Edward's. Really good, and really strong start. I wanted to do one injury note real quick. There was actually two injury notes. I guess I'll just get the two injury notes out of the way real quick. So two guys that did not play this past weekend. I had an injury update on the board yesterday. One was Cole Mullins, who plays for Mill Creek in the state of Georgia, who is coming off the championship game. Same high school as Caleb Downs, who is now playing for Alabama Crimson Tide. Cole Mullins informed me yesterday that he had a fibula fracture, lower fibula. So he's going to be out for 3 weeks because he had that ankle surgery. So I'm sorry, 3 months, not 3 weeks, out for 3 months. So sounds like the season's over as far as his ability to play this year. It happened actually during the scrimmage. It did not happen this past weekend because they had a game on Saturday. Mill Creek did dominate, but Cole Mullins was obviously not able to play. So Cole Mullins is out for a while. The other one is Bronte Johnson out of Northside High School in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So Bronte did not play this past game. They lost 26-13 in their season opener. Bronte has a lower leg injury. I haven't been able to determine whether it's an ankle or a foot, but it's one or the other. But he's only going to be out until week 3. So he'll be back very shortly. So his isn't a serious one, but unfortunately Cole is out for 3 months, which does stink. Yeah, it does stink, especially because we wanted to see your year. That part stinks. He's also playing for defending state champion Mill Creek. I mean, it's very unfortunate. But wishing them both speedy recovery. Obviously, we expect Bronte Johnson back very soon, but hoping that Cole has a very successful recovery. I did speak to him, like I said, and he's in high spirits. He's not down in the dumps on it. So, just continuing the process and to rehab. So unfortunate circumstances, but that's just kind of a quick couple injury updates that I probably could have led the show off with, but the show goes on, sir. Sure goes on. Kingston Viliamoasa, who is a linebacker out of Bellflower, California, St. John Bosco. They are coming off of state championship in 2022 and a national championship. Got off to a very strong start. They defeated Liberty 42-22. Liberty is a Nevada school as well. So they play several schools out of state every single year. And they got off to a strong start, obviously. I know they have another game. I think they go out to Hawaii for a away game this year, which is pretty awesome. But St. John Bosco got off to a really strong start, 8-point victory. If you watch, because I don't have the official stats from the game because nothing was posted, but if you watch Kingston's huddle highlight tape from the first game, it's business as usual, man. Like, what do I expect out of Kingston Viliamoasa? I expect exactly what he put on film. Him making plays in pursuit, him being incredibly physical, good eye, discipline. Like, he's just a really good football player, guys. I mean, I would be surprised. I'll put it like this. After this year, you're going to be out with, potentially restocking the linebacker room, right? And then you're going to be seeing guys like Drake Bowen and all those guys play a whole lot more. Jay Nosberry, Jalen Sneed. I would be surprised if Kingston came in, though, and wasn't at least in the 2 deep pretty early on in his career. Like, I think he's that good. I really do. I would say that his upside maybe isn't quite as high as a couple other linebackers in Notre Dame's. We're talking about 2024, by the way, David. All the players that we're talking about are 2024 kids. No 2020, because there's only 2 Notre Dame commits in the 2025 class. Davion Dixon, defensive tackle out of the state of Florida, and Justin Thurman out of the state of Florida, running back. hit the run. Tampa Jesuit did have a scrimmage this past weekend, but neither of them had official games. So we're just talking 2024 recruits today. Okay, so, but like I was saying, I think there's a couple guys like a Drake Bowen or Jaden Osbury that I could look at and say like probably have a higher upside than Kingston. But Kingston's like one of those kids. He's like the Jaden Greathouse of the 2024 class, man. Like, is there any doubt that Kingston Villiamos isn't at least going to be a good football player for Notre Dame? Like, is there any doubt? I think that he's just got such a high floor, man. Such a high floor. He's just really good. I mean, at the end of the day, that's kind of it's just what it is, man. Like, it's really not great analysis, guys. And I do pride myself on good analysis. But at the end of the day, like some kids bring such a high floor to the table that you're just like, there's not much ability for that kid to fail. Like, I just really don't think that Kingston's going to fail at Notre Dame. You know, like I just think that he's going to be at least a good football player. Could be a great football player, absolutely. Could he be an All-American? Absolutely. But is he at worst going to be a good football player? 100%. 100%. So Kingston, business as usual in their victory, 42-22 over Liberty. I think I had two more games that I wanted to highlight real quick. Yep. So Sadie Taberon, Ben Powell, Westchester, Ohio, Lakota West. They played against St. Xavier, which is another good school in the state of Ohio. Of course, Lakota West is where Ben Minnick came out of in the 2023 class. And Irish Gordon, I'm about to put you in timeout, man. You need to chill. Leave Malik alone. Ben Minnick and Malik Hartford in the 2023 class. Of course, Ben Minnick and Notre Dame. Ohio State getting Malik Hartford. Taberon Benny Powell played safety in his first game, his natural position. I thought he looked pretty good, pretty solid. I'm not like all in on Taberon Benny Powell or anything. Like that's not where I am. But I thought he actually looked surprisingly comfortable, kind of working in space a little bit. I had some questions as far as how he would look, but he looked pretty good. I mean, there was one play, him working to the sideline. I think it was like a little out route. He was coming from the inside out and blew up a kid on the sideline. I'm like, it looks pretty good, man. He looked very, very solid. So I was optimistic for what I saw of Taberon. He also blocked a kick in his game as well. So they lost 10-0 to a very tough St. Xavier team. So hopefully they get back on the winning track next week. But I thought Taberon looked good. You know, like, again, nothing blew me away about his outing, but I thought he looked like a better athlete than maybe I had given him enough credit for. So, they need to come back and get a victory after a tough, hard-fought loss, but I think they still have a good football team, obviously. The last game of the week, this is one that I watched wall to wall, start to finish. I want to watch my guy Carson Hobbs because everybody knows we do Carson's Corner here. He's a good friend of the show. Archbishop Moeller, state of Ohio. They traveled. Actually, they didn't travel. Well, they traveled 40 minutes, but they didn't travel. They took on Ben Davis, which is another really good school out of the state of Indiana. And Carson texted me after the game, and he said, dang, they smacked us. They killed us. And he had said something like, we hadn't lost a game like that in years, like to that deficit. It was 49-28. So Ben Davis is an Indiana school. So, and this is a fun one to end the conversation on because there's a Notre Dame target that played for Ben Davis, which I kind of want to talk about. First and foremost, Carson Hobbs, I thought he looked solid in his. So for people that don't know the backstory of what's going on with Carson had a thumb injury this offseason, which required surgery. He just got cleared this the Friday before this game. So he had been only a couple days in practice of like starter reps coming back, right? But I thought he looked pretty good for the most part. You know, it's tough because he's wearing a cast on his hand for like another week. So, like, he's a press man corner, so he can't get his hands on receivers right now as much. Only his offhand is the one that he can really press with. So I'm looking forward to seeing Carson obviously continue to improve moving forward here. Ben Davis, though, man. And Brandon, it's great that you asked this question, man, because I wanted to pull this question up because I didn't want to wait for the mailbag on this. It's very on topic. Brandon Plesner asked, any word on how Mark Zachary played versus Archbishop Moeller? Yeah, Brandon. So in my update piece, he made plays on both sides of the ball in this game. So first big play of the game for him, he was playing wide receiver. It was actually on Carson Hobbs' side. They were playing, though, Archbishop Moeller was playing some type of cover too. So Carson had passed him off to a safety. Mark Zachary caught this little seam ball, broke a tackle on the safety, and went 67 yards for a touchdown. So he looked fast, explosive. I talked to Carson about Mark Zachary after the game, and he was like, yeah, that dude's really smooth, explosive kid, like really good player. So he had that long 67-yard touchdown. And then the craziest play of the game was there was less than a minute left in the half. Archbishop Moeller was down 28-14, but they were on the goal line. They were about to score. So it would have been 28-21 at halftime. Well, Archbishop Moeller fumbled, and Mark Zachary picked up the ball and went 99 yards on a scoop and score for a touchdown. So on 2 plays, he had 166 total yards and 2 touchdowns, a 67-yard touchdown catch and a 99-yard fumble return for a touchdown. So Mark looked really good, man. Interesting enough, because Notre Dame's recruited him as a corner, which is what he played as a sophomore. He's a 2025 kid, Mark Zachary. And he played safety in this game. They were playing like single high free safety stuff with Mark Zachary with free safety. I don't think he's a safety because, one, I just don't think he's going to have an impact in the run game like that. Like, he's a little bit of a slightly built dude. So I don't see safety necessarily, but I do see explosiveness, smoothness, and just a habit to be around the football. So Mark Zachary looked really good. And that big swing in the football game, because that made it like, I think they missed the extra point. So it was like 34-14 at halftime or something like that. And they just coasted at that point. They absolutely coasted. So Mark Zachary looked really good against Archbishop Moeller, a player that Notre Dame fans need to keep a close eye on. I know if you watched our cornerback show last week, I talked about him in like the top group of players because Mike Mickens loves Mark Zachary. Notre Dame really likes Mark Zachary. So he got off to a really fast start against Archbishop Moeller. So really impressive player, especially this past week. So Mark Zachary stole the show against Archbishop Moeller. And that is all the from this past week. So I'm going to move on to the tight end board in 2025 in a second. Before I do, if you could just hit that like button, subscribe to the podcast, notification bell, as always. And if you're listening, 5-star reviews on your favorite podcast platform are very much appreciated. But that's going to do this weekend recap from the high school commits, Notre Dame, in the 2024 class. All right, folks, let's talk about tight end recruiting in the 2025 class. This has been a very weird journey to get to where we are now. Basically, Notre Dame had gotten a little over 2 months ago now. They had gotten a big commitment from Nate Roberts, who was a tight end out of Washington High School in the state of Oklahoma. We know, we had kind of given you guys a heads up about 2 weeks ago at this point, but last week he decommitted from the class, Notre Dame. We do not expect Notre Dame to recruit him anymore. We expect that one to just kind of be dead in the water. We know obviously where that one's trending with where Nate Roberts is looking. So now the tight end board is bare in 2025 as far as no commitments in the class. But luckily, Notre Dame did a wise thing. And this is a 3-step process that I'm going to kind of walk you through of how I see this tight end class filling out in 2025, because I think it's incredibly interesting to kind of. First thing that Notre Dame wants to do, and this was true even while Nate Roberts was a part of the class, Notre Dame wants James Flanagan in the 2025 class. He is a tight end out of Notre Dame Prep in the state of Wisconsin, Green Bay, Wisconsin, to be exact. He is the younger son of Jim Flanagan, former Notre Dame defensive lineman in the late 80s, early 90s. Actually, no, he was just the early 90s, I think. So James Flanagan has been, though, a guy that Notre Dame's been incredibly high on for some time. Even when Nate Roberts was committed to the class, Joshua, so I'm sorry. I just want to bring this one up real quick before I get into James Flanagan. I'm sorry, guys. You know how my mind works. Joshua Bird just says, wait, they're not going to recruit him anymore. Is he looking for a bag now? I thought he said Notre Dame was a stream school. He did say Notre Dame was a stream school. I wouldn't say that it's a bag thing necessarily. Like I'm not, I'm not going to talk about stuff that I don't know, but the reason that Nate Roberts decommitted from Notre Dame was not because of money. Like I do not find that, I do not hear that to be the case. I just think that there was a lot of disappointment in how this whole thing kind of worked itself out and how Notre Dame was portrayed a little bit. So I just don't believe that Notre Dame is going to be recruiting Nate Roberts anymore moving forward. So that's kind of where we are with that one as of right now. But great question, Joshua. I know it's very curious, but yes, I don't anticipate them recruiting Nate Roberts anymore. James Flanagan, though, was a top target for Notre Dame even while Nate Roberts was in the class, because we know when Notre Dame missed out on Carter Nelson in the 2024 class out of Ainsworth, Nebraska, they kind of had made a decision we're going to take 2 tight ends in 2025 instead of 2024 at this point. So what kind of has been trending here is that James Flanagan quickly became the guy that Notre Dame wanted. So what you guys need to understand about this process is that Notre Dame wants to have 2 tight ends in the class. James Flanagan is one of them. I'll talk about a couple other guys that Notre Dame has remained in contact with. And then a third thing that I think Notre Dame is also probably going to do moving forward, most likely. But it all starts with James Flanagan. Notre Dame wants him in the class. He is a near consensus top 200 player in the 2025 class, consensus 4-star, really, really talented football player. And I know there's a couple questions about him in the chat. We'll kind of get to that probably more towards the mailbag section. First step, though, Notre Dame wants James Flanagan in the class. Step 2, I believe that Notre Dame right now is reevaluating their board a little bit. Because what happened is you got Nate Roberts in the class. You felt great about that one. And then you're also feeling really good about where you are with James Flanagan, right? I've talked about this in the past, but basically what I perceived was he's high on Notre Dame. He's also high on Wisconsin. Does he want to go with the legacy route, or does he want to blaze his own trail? That's kind of the 2 ways that James Flanagan could have went. I think that Notre Dame has put themselves in a great position, though, and I think that they're probably the favorite right now for James Flanagan. When exactly it happens, it's a matter of closing. How can you close if you're Notre Dame? But obviously, they're in a very good spot with James Flanagan. If you get James Flanagan, the next step, like I said, is you're reevaluating your board. And I want to talk about a couple players that Notre Dame is still in contact with. I know there was a question of who they are and who other players are that they're kind of taking a look at. And that's why this section is kind of designed this way. You get James Flanagan, 2 players that I know Notre Dame has maintained relationship with to varying degrees. One is Ryan Gee, who's a tight end out of Milton High School in the state of Georgia. So this one's been very interesting because Ryan Gee is incredibly high, or was incredibly high on Notre Dame. I think he still is incredibly high on Notre Dame. If you remember going back to the summer, he had gone back-to-back weekends taking a trip to Notre Dame. He went out there with his mom. He wanted his dad to see it, so they went back the same weekend. This was before Nate Roberts committed to Notre Dame. And Ryan Gee, I think Notre Dame was putting themselves in a great position for. Once Nate Roberts came off the board, I think that there was some hesitation on Ryan Gee's side of, do I want to be the second tight end, quote unquote, in a class, or do I want to continue to be a recruiter? So Notre Dame, even before Nate Roberts decommitted, they had maintained a good relationship with Ryan Gee. But ultimately, I just have my questions of whether that is going to be a guy that they push for 100% and whether that fit is going to make total sense. So while they've maintained the relationship with Ryan Gee, that's just a player that they've continued communication with. But I'm not saying he's a guy that Notre Dame is necessarily going to push for. But it's a conversation piece, right? The other player is AJIA, who's out of Orange Lutheran. This one's a really interesting one because he is a 6'5", 215-plus pound tight end, very long, very smooth kid. And he has, I think, upside as being an inline kid as well. AJIA had not heard from Notre Dame for a little while. Because basically, guys, you had to ask yourself, what did the board look like at the time? And what it kind of happened was, once Nate Roberts was in the class, it was all James Flanagan basically at that point. And Notre Dame was in a really good spot with James Flanagan. So there was a good opportunity to have Nate Roberts and James Flanagan in the class. Once Nate Roberts decommitted, you were just kind of like, oh man, now you have to reevaluate everything, right? AJIA had not heard from Notre Dame for a while, a long time. But I was told, and I had a piece that came up on the board about this morning, and I just wrote an article about it at irishbreakdown.com. You should go read it, by the way, if you haven't. But Notre Dame has seemed to up the communication with AJIA recently. This past week for his game, right before his game, he told me that Jared Parker had hit him up, and they're trying to get him to come on a visit to campus sometime this fall. So there is conversation happening with AJIA. There is conversations with Ryan Gee. That's the players that I know of for a fact that Notre Dame has had communication with in some capacity. I'm interested to see for AJIA how that communication continues to get kind of built up as we move on, because the communication was none basically at any point for a while. And then now that the whole decommitment happens, I think that the communication is going to start happening again. Contact is starting to happen again. So I'm interested, one, to see how consistent it becomes in communication. The other one is, can you get AJ to come take a visit to Notre Dame, being a California kid? That is my question. So I'm interested to see it, but I know for a fact that there has been some conversation, some communication back and forth recently, which is good. Can it start to build? That's the next question. But reevaluating the board, I think, is a big thing. I know some people asked about like Jack Vortisleer, and there's some other guys on the board. There's a couple guys on the board that I just don't think there's a ton of communication with at this point. Could that change? Can always change. 100% it could always change. But as of right now, what I think is the third step here, guys, what I think is the third step in this process, we talked about getting James Flanagan, talked about reevaluating the board. I think the third step is that the board expands at some point. That's where I think we go from here. Because I think what's going to happen is I think that Notre Dame is going to land James Flanagan at some point. Joshua, I'm not even reading it, man. I'm just like, you guys are talking about so many weird things. I'm just like, I'm just moving on, man. I don't even know what's happening right now. If the Notre Dame's able to get James Flanagan, which we feel good about, though, I don't know if there's a player on the board that I look at confidently and say that's a guy that Notre Dame could definitely get in this class. So I think that we might have to expand the board a little bit. Luckily, 2025 tight ends looks like it has some pretty good depth in the class. So I would expect, this is just my perspective, this is what I believe, so the tight end board is going to expand at some point in the 2025 class. So we'll see when that happens. If it happens, I would imagine nothing will really happen until they get a commitment from James Flanagan. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they need a public commitment from him before they start expanding, but they need to get some indication of like, hey, we landed the kid in the class. If they are able to do that, I believe then that the board will start to expand. And as it expands, we'll see what the next step is. At the end of the day, though, I think that 2024 tight end recruiting, unless something happens, is over with. I think it's about the 2025 class now. So people are already putting in names like Brock Schatz, a very interesting football player. I know that Jason Smith had mentioned at some point. Dan V, I know, just mentioned Marshall Pritchett, who's the son of Wes Pritchett. I don't have any indication if either one of those guys are going to be where Notre Dame expands the board. I really don't know. I just would expect personally for the board to expand. I haven't even necessarily, I haven't got intel on that from the Notre Dame side of things. Like, that's definitely the route they're going to go. Just after talking to a bunch of the kids that are already on the board for Notre Dame, I just really think that's where it's heading. I really do. So, 1, James Flanagan. 2, evaluate the board, continue to do that. 3, expand. I think that's where you're going, because you ultimately want 2 tight ends in the class for 2025, because you have to look at it, folks. Like, you're in a situation now with Kevin Bauman injured again. I mean, I feel there's a very high lack of confidence that we get anything out of Kevin Bauman in the future. Eli Raridan coming off of his second ACL tear, coming back from injury, will not be available for the beginning of the season, it sounds. You need to start getting some needed depth in this class. Right now, as of today, for the 2023 team, you have Mitchell Evans, Holton Stace, Cooper Flanagan as the healthy scholarship tight ends, and then obviously they have former walk-on, obviously, as well, who is a part of the class, whose name I always forget, and I feel so bad because he's actually a pretty good football player, but it'll come back to me at some point. But basically, you have 4 scholarship tight ends on the class right now. I mean, on the team for Notre Dame, and one of them is a former walk-on. So you need depth at that position, right? Hopefully, Eli Raridan comes back healthy. Hopefully, Jack Larson comes in and can make an impact pretty quickly. But continuing to bolster that room because Notre Dame is tight end U, right? Like Notre Dame is one of those schools that is always consistently pulling in great tight ends, developing them, and getting them to the NFL. Notre Dame cannot stop that now. They need to continue that process, continue to break in. Davis Sherwood was the name I was forgetting. Thank you so much for that, Drew. I really appreciate you, sir. But Notre Dame needs to continue to recruit at a high level there. They're getting some good football players, but it's just one of those situations where there's just been a little bit too much durability concerns in that room. So continuing to bolster, continue to get good numbers. That's the next step for the tight end room. And I think it starts 2024. You already have a tight end in the class, Jack Larson. 2025, getting 2 tight ends is going to be a big step. So that's the tight end room talk. I know there's a lot of questions about it in the chat. We're going to go to a mailbag momentarily. If you're with us, please, questions in the chat, MB, and make sure to put in front of the questions so that I can distinguish. Solo show today, of course. So anything y'all can do to help me out, I would very much appreciate that. I know there's going to be a lot more questions about tight end recruiting in 2025, and I look forward to honestly seeing how things kind of play out because it's going to look different than what we once thought it might look like. Not different in a bad way, just different. So hit that like button, subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you turn on your notification bell for every added show this week. We're in game week, folks. So we're getting close. We're getting close to Notre Dame football finally being back. So make sure to hit the notification bell. If you're listening to us on one of your favorite podcast platforms, 5-star reviews are always very much appreciated. Also, subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple, wherever you do listen to your podcast. But that's going to do it for the tight end talk. We'll get into mailbag next. All right, nothing like a little Wawa iced tea to get the juices flowing today, sir. So let us get working here. We had a couple super chats. Actually, I'm sorry. I want to do this in the beginning of the show, but I completely forgot. Why don't we start this off now? I hope he's still in the chat. Adam Blair, before the show even started, had put in the chat, today's my 20th birthday. Go Irish. Adam, you're a loyal listener to the show. See you just about every show. Happy birthday to you, sir. You're only 20. That makes me feel super old, even though I'm not that old yet, but you're still making me feel old, sir. I remember when I was 20, 11 years ago. Happy birthday, though. And everyone said a friendly happy birthday to Adam Blair, valued member of the Irish Breakdown message board. All right, let's get into a couple super chats here. We had one from Rob Osgood who says, hey, guys, please name 5 2025 recruits that, in your opinion, Notre Dame must have. Thank you for all the hard work on the boards. Sign up if you haven't. Yes, quick plug. Irish Gordy, not chill out, man. You're about to get blocked in a second, sir. Relax. So first and foremost, boards at irishbreakdown.com. I would agree, Rob. I do think it's a good place. So sign up if you haven't. Hey, guys, please. All right, so 5 2025 recruits that, in your opinion, Notre Dame must have. That's a great question, man. 5 that Notre Dame must have. I would say for me, Owen Strebig is a must-have in the 2025 class of offensive tackle. There's other good offensive tackles on the board, but I'm stupid high on Owen Strebig, guys. Like, I really am, man. I I think he is a top 50 football player right now. And I think he has 5-star upside. I really do. That's the offensive tackle out of Waukesha, I believe is how you pronounce it. Someone corrected me one time. Catholic Memorial High School in the state of Wisconsin. He is all of 6'8", 290 pounds right now. Super high on Notre Dame. Has been to campus 3 times this offseason. He also already has a visit scheduled to come back for Ohio State game this year as well. Notre Dame is in a very good spot there. The process is not ending anytime soon, at least until after the junior year is kind of when it sounds like Owen is going to make a decision. But he's a must get for me. It really is. Because after him, like Josh Petty's on the board, I think Josh Petty's a stud. If Notre Dame needs to get him on campus before, I think that one's a viable option. And David Sanders Jr. is the only other player that I would say is at least as well. I think he's the best offensive tackle in the class. So and I don't think that he's a legitimate offer right now or a legitimate option for Notre Dame in the 2025 class. So of the players that are legitimate options at offensive tackle that I think is a stud, I think it's Owen Strebig. I think that he has a chance to be a really special football player. So he would be one. Man, 5 muskets. Brian would disown me on this podcast if I didn't say Taylon Taylor, who's a wide receiver out of the state of Illinois, a really talented football player as well. I think that he is one of the better wide receivers in the 2025 class, maybe the best. I mean, he's really good football player. So Taylon Taylor would be 2 for me. Number 3, man, it's tough. Like, I don't know if any defensive lineman I would necessarily say is a must get, right? Like, I mean, I'd be happy if Notre Dame got Christopher Burgess. I'd be happy if they got Bryce Davis. I mean, there's several guys I look at and say, like, yeah, I would love that player. I'll say Christopher Burgess just for argument's sake, because I think keeping an Illinois kid in state when Alabama, Georgia, and everybody else wants him is a pretty big thing. So he's the 3rd one for me. I'll say Deuce Knight, even though, like, look, I think if Notre Dame ended up with Bear Bachmeier, for instance, it's not a consolation prize in my opinion. Bear Bachmeier is a really good football player, but Deuce is really good, man. He's a stud. Like, he's an absolute stud. So I'll say Deuce Knight as a player for me. And then the last one I'll say is a safety. I think Notre Dame needs to get a big-time safety. The best safety in the class, in my opinion, is Jordan Young, of guys that I have seen out of the state of North Carolina. I don't know if I just have my reservations of, I think he likes him. Charlie, I don't think Bear reminds me anything of Buckner. Like, I don't think he plays like him. I don't think his body type's like him. Like, I don't know, man. I just don't see that one totally. But, we're all entitled to our opinions. I just don't necessarily see that comp. So I'm sorry. My sidetrack, guys. We get sidetracked. Remember, safety for me. I don't think that Jordan Young is a. Let me phrase this better. I think Notre Dame's going to have a shot at Jordan Young. I'm just not totally sold that Notre Dame is going to be the front runner for Jordan Young. So of the guys that I feel better, I'm just going to pick a guy that I feel a little bit better about, and that's Jadon Blair out of North Carolina. I think that kid's a stud, man. 6'4", 180-plus pounds, can play from depth, can come down, physical. He's incredibly explosive. Like, that kid's a stud, in my opinion. He has a lot of Kyle Hamilton in his game. And every safety everywhere in the 2025 class is being compared to Kyle Hamilton, right? Like, I've talked about this a ton. Notre Dame's selling that vision to a lot of the taller safeties. But I think Jadon Blair, for me, is a playmaker that safety needs. And like Gymnasium just said, Dorian Brew. Jim, for me, Dorian Brew would be great. I love Dorian Brew. But I would also be very happy with Devin Williams or Dallas Golden. And there's like a bunch of other corners that I think are on a similar level to Dorian. And also, Notre Dame's recruited corner really well over the last few years, right? Like, I'm thinking of positions that I think Notre Dame needs to add talent desperately. Safety is one of them. For the missteps they've had in 2023 and 2024, Notre Dame needs an impact safety. Adding another great corner is awesome, but it's not necessarily something that you haven't done. You know what I mean? Like, you just got Christian Gray in 2023. You just got Leonard Moore in 2024. Like, the future of Notre Dame corner, I think, is going to be in a really good spot. So I think safety just is a little bit more important for the current makeup of this roster. So that would be 5 for me. Owen Strebig, Deuce Knight, Christopher Burgess, Talon Taylor, Jadon Blair. That would be my 5. So you can also convince me on maybe another defensive lineman like Bryce Davis, maybe, but I really think that Jadon Blair is very much needed. But that safety class, Ivan Taylor would be a great fit. Jordan Young would be a great fit. I mean, I would be ecstatic if Jordan Young picked Notre Dame. But Ivan Taylor, Ethan Long, you just put together a good safety haul in general. But I think that Notre Dame has a chance to do just that this cycle. And Rob, thank you so much for the super chat. I very much appreciate that. If I did not say that, I think I said that, but if I did not, thank you very much. We had a super chat from Charlie Weiss's last belt loop. It says, Mr. Ryan, these guys look great. Jack Larson, I apologize. You look great, and I get why Notre Dame took you. I will be flying out to see my dad and get to watch a game with him for the first time in 3 years. Charlie, that's awesome, man. That's great. That's really cool. And amen. No apologies needed to Jack. I mean, this is one of those situations where you're seeing a good football player that maybe doesn't have the greatest physical traits of all time, and you wanted to see developments, right? So I think that for me, like it's just one of those things where like you had to see more. It was like Bryce Young. I didn't kill Notre Dame for taking Bryce Young for obvious reasons, but I was still hesitant about it because I didn't see it on film. But then you saw it a little bit on film in the first week, and now you just feel a little bit better. I think that this is just like confirmation of like, well, it looks a little bit better. Cool. Well, thank you so much for the super chat, Charlie. I really much appreciate that, man. Charlie also had another one. Charlie says, Carson Hobbs needs to stop talking and actually playing. Not to be hard on him, but he talks way too much and doesn't back it up. I trust Mickens, but I don't know. I mean, Charlie, I guess, Charlie, my question is like, why, like, what's the rush to judgment on that one? I guess is my question. I mean, did you think Carson played bad in the first game? I didn't really think he played bad. He had one pass interference in the game, but like the long touchdown to Mark Zachary wasn't his man, right? Like, it wasn't his zone. So, I mean, I didn't think Carson Hobbs played poorly in the first game. And I mean, their team did go 12-2 last year, and Carson was a big reason for that. So, I mean, like any player, Carson was one of the players, and I've told this to him straight up. Like, I want to see more out of you this year, like 100%, because I think that he's a talented kid, but he needs to take a game to another level. There's no doubt. But I don't think he talks too much, and I don't think that Charlie, that was cover 2, though. I know what you're talking about. Mark Zachary ran right past him because he was in cover 2. He went past his zone. How cover 2 works is a corner has first threat to flats. He had someone in the flat, so he let Mark Zachary go. Mark Zachary caught the football and made a safety miss. That's not his man. Like, it's not like he was in man and Mark Zachary just ran past him. He's playing zone coverage. If anything, and this is the great thing about coaching, if I was the defensive coordinator and Carson Hobbs ran with Mark Zachary and then left the flat wide open, that's when Carson Hobbs is wrong. So yeah, no, that touchdown was not on Carson Hobbs. So that's what do you mean he doesn't talk too much? You gave him a show. I gave him a show because he's a charismatic kid who shares his insights, and I think that the insight of a recruits is a very interesting one. So trying to get perspectives, man. I mean, why do I have any guests on this show? Why do I have parents on this show? Why do I have players on this show? Why do we have other beat writers on this show? Why do we have other media members that cover Notre Dame on this show? Different perspectives. I love perspectives. I think that's the best thing that we have is that we fortunately are very intelligent people that people bring things to the table, right? That we like to listen to. And the great thing is that like I can listen to someone's input and someone's perspective. I can choose to guide my perspective in that direction if they make a great point, or I can keep moving forward in my perspective, right? Like we are free thinkers is what I'm saying. So I love perspectives. Like any recruit that ever wants to come on this show is welcome to come on this show and give me their perspective. I think that you've seen the shows of like, I've even had great interviews with kids that didn't end up with Notre Dame, like Caleb Brewer and DeMello Jones. And I'm still very fortunate for them to come on the show at any points because they provided me with a different perspective, which that's what I love. I love that part of this job is that I get to be able to get so many different people's opinions, perspectives, expertise. That's a wonderful part of this, right? Like, yeah. So, I mean, yeah, we let him have his show because I think that he does a great job. I think he's incredibly well spoken. I think he has a chance to be a good football player. We'll see if obviously he continues to take a step forward. But thank you for the super chat, though, Charlie. I do appreciate it. Irish Blooded said, mailbag. Can we take a? Oh man, it's a little bit. I saw this one before the show, so yeah. Mailbag. Can we take up a collection for Notre Dame audio department every year? Their audio is awful. Smoke signals or fingernails on the chalkboard would be improvements. So I haven't heard this one. Guys, stop in the chat, please. Like, we are grown people, man. Stop, please. I just responded to something that someone said. So, yeah. So just leave it there. We're good. I appreciate people and stuff, but like, it's all good, man. Irish Blooded, to your question, I saw this. I actually did not listen to the recent press conference yet, but I had heard that there was some audio issues apparently, and Marcus Freeman just kind of went like silent, like you couldn't hear him at all anymore. Was kind of like the thing. So yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. It was yeah, I got to go back and listen to it though because I heard it was pretty bad, but we shall see. I don't know if anybody else heard that, but yeah, it was interesting. We had CLVENG08 Cleavenge 08. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that screen name right, but if not, fix it next time, right? We'll fix it next time. Guys, seriously, stop in the chat, please. Please. So, can you sell me on James Flanagan? Is his question. I'm struggling to see it on tape. That's out there. Doesn't seem overly athletic. I'm not pushing back on him, just generally looking for the recommendation. I would say for me, one is that we have to remember that these are sophomores in high school, right? James Flanagan is a 2025 kid, 2025, which means he just got done his sophomore year of high school. And I did see athleticism on film. I think what we need to understand is that there's different types of athletes, right? James, I wouldn't say is like the sudden change of direction athlete that like a Nate Roberts is, for instance, but I think straight line is really good. I mean, I've heard that he's run somewhere high 4.6s to low 4.7s at his age at 6'6", 220 plus pounds. So I think the kid can run a good bit. I really do. And I think that athletically, he has the straight line elements to his game is really fun. And he's got a great body. I mean, that kid's going to be 6'6" and probably 260 pounds. Like at the end of the day, he's very skinny right now, even though he's upwards of 230 pounds now. And I also think you have to like kind of put everything into one bucket as far as evaluation sometimes, as far as athleticism. He is a track and field athlete, for instance, right? 177 foot 10 inches in the discus, state champion. 52 7 1/4 in the shot puts, second in the state of Wisconsin. Also a 6 foot high jumper as a sophomore, as a 6'6" tight end. And he's also one of the best hockey players in the state of Wisconsin. So this kid's just kind of a natural athlete. And I think you also see him on the field. He averaged over 20 yards a catch. He also stars as a middle linebacker for the team. I think that we still have yet to see the best athletic version of James Flanagan. And he's moving, but I mean, for people that love the stars conversation too, and I'm not saying this is you necessarily, but He's a consensus 4-star. He's a near consensus top 200 player by every single platform. He's got offers to a lot of good schools. So I think that he's a really talented kid, man. I think that he is just going to continue to develop into his body. So I think you just need to kind of give him a little bit of time. Just give him a little bit of time, see what the junior film looks like. I expect him to take a massive jump as a junior, and he's already a kid that's regarded very well on the recruiting side of things. Oh, man. All right. But keep an open mind. I think you might be surprised. We had a question from Irish Gordian Nuts. What are your thoughts about the depth chart versus Navy? Vipers loaded. Plus, it seems that Bowen and Osby are going to get legit playing time. It does look like that. That was my first takeaway is when I saw Brian post the official depth chart this morning. It was nice to see some of the linebackers listed where they were. It was very interesting to see. I believe Jaden Osbury was listed as a will on the depth chart. I'm interested to see how that plays out. I mean, he's been very impressive, obviously, in the spring and into the fall. So I am very excited to see both Drake and Jaden hopefully get a lot of playing time. That was really my only things that really popped to me. Like, I expected most of what we saw on the depth chart. I thought it was interesting that Joshua Burnham, I think, was listed as a 13 Viper. I expected him maybe be a little bit higher, maybe second. But regardless, I think he's going to rotate in. So I wouldn't lose my mind too much, IGK, on where guys are on the first depth chart of the year, because we know things change. And I mean, there's also, like, there's a lot of cases sometimes where, like, a guy's listed as a backup left tackle, but that's only because he's second on the depth chart, but we know that they would move somebody else from right tackle over to left tackle, for instance. And there's always those nuances to the depth charts. But I agree. It does seem like some of the young linebackers are going to play this year, and I'm very excited about that. I think that Drake Bowen's a stud. I think Jaden Osbury is a stud. I hope that they get an opportunity to play in the show outs, because linebacker play wasn't good enough last year. And we know JD Bertrand's going to play. We know Maris is going to play. We know Jack Kaiser is going to play. But I would also like to see Drake play. I would also like to see Jaden Osbury play, because they're really good football players, man, and they could help this team. So I hope that they get their opportunities. And it seems, but if you're into the depth chart thing, it seems like it might happen. We had a question from Pete Weber. It said, after seeing this release of depth chart, who do you think is the shortest, least closest competition with their backup? That's a great question, Pete. I actually hadn't thought about that too in depth yet. I'm actually pulling it up as we speak, because I just kind of wanted to, a couple of the positions. Like I said, there was nothing crazy on the depth chart that I watched, and I was like, oh my God, what is that? Like, that doesn't make any sense. But to your question of who's the closest in competition, man, I mean, like, I would say like this, right? Is that Chris Tyree's the starting slot on this depth chart. But I would say for me, like, I think there's going to be a lot of instances where, like, Jaden Greathouse is on the field, right? And Chris Tyree's, because they're just different football players. So I think when you look at where guys are on depth chart comparative to who's in front of them or behind them, it's a lot about how players mesh together, right? And so I think that the Jaden Greathouse one for me is just like when they need a more pro slot type, maybe less of, not the guy that can kind of do a little bit of everything out there. I think that you might end up going to a guy like a Jaden Greathouse in more traditional situations. So I think that for me, like, that would be one that I say, like, there wasn't a ton of separation. If anything, I think it's just Chris Tyree's a little bit older and he brings a dynamic element that isn't enough on the offense. So that's kind of how you differentiate the places on the spot, on the slot, and on the depth chart, excuse me. Another one is, like, I think the Oars is really funny on the running backs, because we've talked all along about, like, it's Audric Estime, but after that, it's like some weeks it might be Jabron Payne, other weeks it might be Jadarian Price. Devin Ford is going to be in the conversation a little bit. Jeremiah Love is a dynamic freshman. I'm really interested to see how the running back touches kind of work itself out, because I'm not really 100% sure on what that's going to look like per se. Like you could tell me that Jabron Payne right now is going to be the second leading rusher on this team. You could tell me Jadarian Price is going to be. You can even tell me Jeremiah Love is. I wouldn't think that you're crazy. I think that for me, it's just very interesting. A very interesting battle for touches, which is going to be fun to watch. We've obviously talked about the Pat Coogan versus Andrew Kristofic conversation, right? Like if Pat struggles early, do you go to Billy? You know, how close is that battle? I mean, it seemed like from the outside perspective that Pat won it pretty early on in camp, but is it a constant battle each and every week for that starting spot? I think we'll see, right? Like I think we'll see. So that's going to be an interesting one as well. If I look to the defensive side of the ball, we saw Javonte Jean-Baptiste and Nana Safamensa listed as an or. That was expected. Both those guys are going to play a lot. Jaden Osbury will, like I said, is a very interesting one. But Jaden Osbury is up to 224 pounds, which is really good to see. And Brian told me that he looks very good considering. The boundary safety position, I think, is another one that I was very interested to see. I kind of expected Xavier Watts to be the starter and the other safety to be DJ Brown or Ramon Henderson. That's kind of what I expected. But funny enough is that free safety, they list Xavier Watts with Ramon Henderson as the backup at free safety. That's interesting. That's super, super, super interesting. And not something I was totally expecting. And I'm also kind of surprised that Xavier Watts is an or on the depth chart, like Xavier Watts or Ramon Henderson. I just expected it to be Xavier Watts and then whoever the second stringer is. And then boundary safety, we have DJ Brown or Thomas Harper or or Antonio Carter or Thomas Harper. Obviously, we know that Thomas Harper is going to be the main nickel in the defense, so that was not going to matter as much, but it's just going to be very interesting. The other one, the or at corner behind Benjamin Morrison right now, is Christian Gray or Clarence Lewis. I'll say it like this. I think Clarence Lewis is a very solid football player, but I am incredibly happy that they're seemingly giving Christian Gray an opportunity to play this year. I think that is really nice to see. So that's a couple of my quick observations, Pete. Sorry if I rambled there for a second, but like that's just a few things that I kind of solved with the depth chart today. All right, let's move on to the next question. We had Jason Smith ask this question. I believe somebody else asked it as well. Let me move down here and just make sure we had a confidence level. I'll go to that one next. Oh, yeah, here it is. Okay. So we had Jason Smith who said, did Deuce Knights play in their loss to IMG? Deuce Knight, of course, is the 2025 quarterback. And then we had someone who asked something similar. Yeah, we had PK that said, saw the Lipscomb versus IMG, thought Deuce played great given the supports. So in regards to Deuce Knight, of course, is the top 2025 quarterback targets for Notre Dame in the 2025 class. I thought Deuce Knight played fantastic. I agree, PK. I think that he played really well because I think it was pretty clear when you were watching that game that although Lipscomb Academy is a good team and they certainly have a fair share of talent, that IMG Academy team is just a little bit more talented. Like that's kind of what my quick observations were from Lipscomb. And Deuce Knight, I think he ended up being 25 for 37 for 230 something yards or something like that. Like he had a really nice game. I think he threw no touchdowns, no interceptions. But if you watch that game, there were a few plays where like he was dead to rights and he's able to really create things outside of structure, looked really strong in the pocket. I thought he looked really good for the opportunity he had. So Deuce Knight showed out against IMG, in my opinion. If those schools were a little bit more on the same playing field, the same level, I think that Deuce Knight would have shown through even more because there were some plays where he had a scramble on like 3rd and long where he got a first down where it was just like, dang, man, like there's probably 3 or 4 dudes in the 2025 class, that could do that. And Deuce is probably the best at it. I mean, he makes guys look very stupid in open field. So yeah, Deuce did play, did start. I thought he looked very good. Thought he looked very, very good in his outing against IMG Academy. I think we just had a follow from PK about Deuce. He said, mailbag, Deuce threw short, long, and ran well. Lipscomb coaches got the calls in late consistently. Yes, that was something I noticed as well, as everything just kind of looked a little bit disjointed. Wonder how much part of that is coaches working with Deuce, because Deuce obviously is a pretty recent transfer. I don't know if there's just some communication that needs to get kind of ironed out. But you're right. There were a lot of calls that seemed to be coming in late. But yes, he threw to all levels of the field. He made some plays, but his feet, I think, really shone through, especially, man. Like, he was making guys look very stupid in the pocket during that game. So he did a lot with, I'm not going to say little, because Lipscomb still has good players, but a lot with less than what the opposition had. Let's put it like that. Deuce I texted Brian Driscoll after the game. I was just like, yeah, Deuce is special, man. Like, yup. There's no doubt about it. He's really, really good. Right. Next question. Brandon just asked about the depth chart. I think I kind of already answered this, Brandon, but you're a loyal listener, so I wanted to pop this up. Brandon Pleasure says, Ryan, what's your biggest takeaway and or surprise from week 0 depth chart versus Navy? I think it's that the free safety was listed as Xavier Watts with Ramon Henderson as his backup. That's kind of, I expected boundary safety to be Ramon Henderson, DJ Brown, to be some type of some type of mix in that. I just felt like Porky the Pig, by the way. You guys know how he like stutters trying to say a word, but then he says a word that is the same word. Like, that's how I just felt there for a second. But I just really think that the safety position is an interesting one to me. I quickly just I thought Ramon Henderson at the boundary safety was going to be a Ramon Henderson or DJ Brown type of situation. That's what I thought. So him being the backup at free, I thought was very interesting, especially because Ramon's a good athlete, but he's always struck me as a player that's a little bit better towards the line of scrimmage. And that's more of what I would think of as, like, the other position. So I don't know. We'll see. But I have my question marks about safety. We shall see, though. I hope I'm wrong, because I think Xavier is going to be a good player, but I don't know. I have my reservations. We had Archer 452. What's up, Archer? Michigan will likely self-impose a 3-game suspension for Harbaugh to try to appease the NCAA after a 4-game suspension was called off. Do you think Jim Harbaugh leaves after the season? Archer, I feel like this is like the first offseason where I didn't feel like Jim Harbaugh was going to leave. I mean, it was like the previous 2 seasons, I think, before that, where I thought Harbaugh was gone. This was the first offseason in a couple of years where I actually didn't think that Harbaugh was going to leave. Well, it's a wait and see for me. Like, do I think Jim Harbaugh is eventually going to leave to go back to the NFL? Yes, I do. Is it going to happen after this season? I'm just not sure, man. Like, I would have guessed that it would have already happened at this point. So the fact that it hasn't is just kind of interesting to me. It's just a wait and see. Like, I honestly, 2 years ago, I thought he was gone. I thought he was gone because everybody knows that he was, he was interviewing for jobs, and it was kind of a circus, and it affected recruiting. But we'll see what turns out, man. I just really don't know. I can't predict Jim Harbaugh anymore. The only thing I can predict is that he's going to eat his boogers at some point this year on the sideline. That is something I know. Is he going to leave for the NFL after the season? I'm just not 100% sure. All right. Next question from Brandon Plensner says, any word on if Notre Dame has reestablished contact relationship with tight end Jack Von Dorsalier from Texas now that there are 0 current tight end commits, even though he left Notre Dame out of his top 8? Brandon, I haven't been able to get verification on this, so I'm not going to speak too much on it. I haven't heard too much noise on that side of things, though. So, like, I'm skeptical if they have, but I'm not going to say it definitely has not begun to kick back up, but we'll see. I'll have more updates on that as far as moving forward. Like I said before, though, the 2 guys that I have been able to 100% verify have communication with Notre Dame or have recently had communication with Notre Dame is Ryan Gee and AJIA. Those are the 2 guys that I've been able to verify as of now. Great question, though. We had a question from Pete Weber who says, are most 2024 and 2025 recruits holding off until Ohio State for their visit? Or are there any big names coming the first 2 weeks? Great question. So as of right now, I know for a fact, and this is on the Irish Breakdown visitor list on the message board. So boards.irishbreakdown.com if you're not signed up, Pete, or anybody else out there that's listening. All 378 of you, hit that like button. So for the first home game of the season, which is Tennessee State week 2 or week 1, but Notre Dame's second week. I know Logan Saldate is taking his official visit that weekend, so he'll be on campus. There will be other recruits on campus, but that's like the big name that's on campus. Central Michigan, Bear Bachmeier will be there. I'll be there that week. That's the week before Notre Dame. That's the 16th. Bear Bachmeier will be on campus for the Central Michigan game. So that's a couple of the big names so far. That Bear Bachmeier during Central Michigan game is an interesting one. It's going to be a very I get my eyes open for that one. Really got my eye open for that one. So we shall see. But yes, there will be some visitors on campus the first couple weekends. Big time visitors, though, for the most part, will be Ohio State. They'll be waiting for a little bit. I mean, like right now, we already have Rowan Byrne, Owen Strebig. I would anticipate Taylor being there, although it hasn't been verified yet. Like there's some dudes coming for the Ohio State game already. Like no doubt about that. Next question is from Joshua Board. Says, any chance of the Carter Nelson flip in 2024 class if Notre Dame shows out this year, or is it done? I think it's done, Joshua. I think that Notre Dame isn't going to be heavily recruiting Carter Nelson moving forward. Would they be able to keep tabs on him? It's possible, but I think that ship has just kind of sailed at this point. I think Notre Dame's eyes are mostly to 2025 at this point. So I would expect 2025 is more the attention than 2024 and trying to flip Carter Nelson. My opinion. We had another question that was from Drew Bentz, who says, confidence level on Deuce Knights. I still feel really good about where they are. Like I said before, man, I think at the end of the day, this decision that's coming this fall, he said he planned to come for the USC game this season with Notre Dame. I think this is a Notre Dame-Tennessee battle. I think it always was, and I think that's what it's ultimately going to be. I think Notre Dame's in a really good position. You have to close down the stretch, but I think Notre Dame has put themselves in pole position for them as far as like they're the top 2 school. And I think that there's most days I wake up and I think Notre Dame's the leader, to be honest with y'all. Like that's what I feel. Is there some days where Tennessee might be jockeying? I think that's also possible as well, but I think Notre Dame has a very good chance at Deuce Knight. Yeah. Let this play out a little bit. Let this play out. I think Notre Dame has done a tremendous job with Deuce. Tremendous job. I know everyone's freaking out because he's playing at a school in Tennessee now, and like I get it. Trust me, folks, I get it. But I think Notre Dame's done a really good job with Deuce Knight. Really good job. All right, next question. We're going to go to Bailey Brad. Bailey Brad says, thoughts on Abdul Sanders, linebacker out of Mater Dei. He looked great in their opener. He's a good player, man. I mean, should we be surprised that Mater Dei has dudes in the 2025 class? I mean, Nasir Wyatt as a pass rusher. Also have both the corners, Darius Dixon, Chuck McDonald. Offensively, they got, the Jordan Davidson, and they just have so many good football players. They really do. Abdul Sanders is a big, physical, downhill, explosive guy. I think he's listed at like 6'3", 215 pounds. Really good player. Notre Dame, I know, has had contact with him. Getting him to Kansas is going to be a thing that I think is going to be a necessity. But we'll see what happens as far as the Notre Dame relationship with Abdul Sanders. But yes, I have seen Abdul. He's incredibly talented, physical. I mean, that kid's going to be 6'3", 240 pounds and just be a physical downhill freak. Like, he's an athletic kid. Really good football player. That 2025 class for Mater Dei is stupid, by the way, folks. Like, it's absolutely dumb. We just mentioned Darius Dixon, Nasir Wyatt, Chuck McDonald. Like, that 2025 class, the juniors now, silly stuff for Mater Dei. Got Archer with a question. If it would actually pull up, that'd be great. There it is. Said Nick Saban just got his first legacy recruit from his own reign as Dre Kirkpatrick's son committed. Which current head coach do you think will be at the same school long enough to recruit a legacy? Archer, you know what's wild about the Dre Kirkpatrick Jr. thing? Is that, do you all understand how old Dre Kirkpatrick is? So Dre Kirkpatrick Jr., who's a 2025 kid, so he's a senior in high school now, okay? Senior in high school. I've actually talked to someone about this before because I came across his son like last year, the year before. And Dre Kirkpatrick right now, does he still play in the NFL or is he done? He's a free agent right now, so he's not on an NFL roster right this second. 33 years old, guys. He's 33 years old, which means his son's probably 17, maybe 18. Which means, yeah, he probably had his son when he was 15 or 16 years old. It's wild. It's wild. So it's a very unique circumstance, is what I'm saying, Archer, right? Like, yes, Nick. No, he's not a 2025 recruit, Jason. He's a 2024 recruit. So he's a senior in high school now, Dre Kirkpatrick Jr., I believe. He's a senior this season. So that means that he's 17 or 18 years old, probably. Dre Kirkpatrick is 33 years old. Still active NFL player. He isn't retired officially yet. He's just a free agent. So it's just wild to think about, man. I saw that because I saw his son's name as a 2024 recruit. I'm like, wait, how old is Dre Kirkpatrick? I felt like he just got drafted like 10 years ago or so. And then I saw that he was only 33 years old. I'm like, dang, man, that's wild. So, yeah. To the question, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. The crazy part is that, like, man, I need to fix this hat, by the way. Give me a second, yeah, folks. It's an interesting question, though. I mean, it would have to be a special circumstance where a player has a kid pretty young, right? Because like kids just don't. Kids don't have. I mean, it's just gonna take a special situation. I'm sorry, I'm rambling on words a little bit because it's just such a unique situation. It just doesn't happen very often. So, yeah, very very interesting though. I hope Marcus Freeman's there long enough, but man, chill out, Joshua. My hair's just up right now, dude. My forehead is fine, folks. You need to relax, sir. You need to relax. Man, you need to relax. You guys are crazy. You guys know that I'm running solo too, and you just keep messing with me. Stop it. Omar Alston. How would Eli Raritan returning and solidifying the downfield tight end receiver as projected affect tight end recruiting for 2025? Omar, I mean, I think that you would still need a second tight end in the class. Like you need the numbers at this point, right? It's not as much the impact. I think Notre Dame still has some talented kids on the roster that they feel really great about moving forward. But I think at the end of the day, it comes down to you need numbers. Like you have 3 scholarship tight ends on the roster, plus Davis Sherwood, who is a scholarship player now, but came into Notre Dame as a walk-on. And then one of those scholarship tight ends that I'm talking about is a true freshman, Cooper Flanagan. So he hasn't played a down in a Notre Dame uniform at this point yet. So you just need numbers. I mean, Eli Raritan coming back, I think, eases how good the second tight end in 2025 has to be, right? Like if he comes in and he's a stud, it's like, okay, we still have him for multiple years moving forward, several years. So it's not as much like we need to bring in some legitimate contributors as far as like early on in their career. Maybe you can take a gamble on a kid that's a little bit more of a upside play per se. But I think ultimately it doesn't change the numbers. You still need to get numbers in the 2025 class because you just don't have a ton of depth right now at the position. We had this strange question from D-Troll Hunter, who I feel like I was getting trolled when I'm reading this. But he says, Ryan, you can only choose one condiment for the rest of your eternity. Ketchup, mustard, or mayo. Which are you riding with? It's a great question, man. So I'm just reading the chat. Y'all are funny. It's ketchup. It's ketchup, and it's pretty significantly ketchup for me. Yeah, I mean, I'll put it like this, man. Sorry, you guys are killing me. I'm not a big mustard guy. I think mustard is fine, like in things as far as like helping to build something. like a sauce or something, like a barbecue sauce, even like mustard's cool, whatever. Mayo's good. I mean, mayo's needed. It adds moisture. It adds a little bit of hit of fat. Like it's cool or whatever. But for me, it's ketchup. For me, it's ketchup. Ketchup also is a great thing to put in sauces as well. Like that helps thicken it, gives you the flavor. I made a meatloaf yesterday, which obviously ketchup is a big part of a meatloaf. So give me ketchup. And it's pretty convincingly ketchup. I know there's like this weird thing about ketchup though. Like I don't know what it is, but I've seen it on the Irish Breakdown Much Board. I've seen it on Twitter. I've seen this chat at times. For whatever reason, there's some people that are really big haters on ketchup, man. I don't understand that. I think ketchup's delicious personally, but what do I know, right? What do I know? So I'm just a guy with a microphone. That's all I am. Just a guy with a microphone loves ketchup. Mayo's fine though. I actually prefer like aiolis to mayo personally, but like a nice, nice, it's good, whatever. But yeah. Ryan's food takes. Ask me all about my foods takes, I guess. Whatever. Joshua Board says, I know it's a touchy subject, so if you can't answer, that's fine. But is Nolan Ziegler okay? Sounds like the young man has had some personal issues. I just hope he's okay. Joshua, we can't comment on what's going on. All I'll say is that we expect everything to be okay. It's just he's going through some stuff, right? And working his way back. And yes, keep everything, just positive on that front and everything. But just, people go through stuff at times, and it's very unfortunate, but unfortunately, I can't comment on exactly what it is. But I didn't want to ignore the question because I know there are a lot of people that genuinely out there are, one, curious, and two, they just want to wish him good fortune, right? Because they don't know exactly what's going on. So, we'll talk about it when we can talk about it, type of situation. So, but we can't comment on it now. We had a question from Josh Buffo, the motivational business banker. It says, Ryan, who in your opinion are starting linebackers in 2024, assuming Kingston signs? So, there's always a situation, I believe, that there's always a situation that a couple of the senior linebackers can return for the school for another year. I'm pretty sure. Do all of them have an extra year? I'm pretty sure they all have an extra year if they want to, right? Does JD maybe not have one? I would say this. I'm just going to assume in this question that all three linebackers are off the board, because I think that that's a better way to look at it. Because I think people really, like, Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you want to know which of the young linebackers am I highest on, right? I think that's kind of where the question's going a little bit. So I'm just going to assume, for argument's sake, that all three of the linebackers that are going to start to begin this season are off the board. So Maris Loifel, we'll say graduated. He's off to the NFL. We'll say JD and Jack as well. Whatever. Cool. If I had a three-man starter in 2024, personally, it would be Drake Bowen, Jaden Osbury at will, and Jalen Sneed at Rover. That would be my starters, man. That would be explosive, versatile, and a lot of fun. That would be a lot of fun. Man, could you guys imagine, honestly, like Jalen Sneed and Jaden Osbury on the field at the same time from a speed perspective, not to mention Drake Bowen as well as a downhill explosiveness? That would be incredible. So that would be my pick. I don't know if that's necessarily plausible. I don't know who's going to come back for sure out of the seniors. It's just that young linebacker group, though, has me excited. And I think that in the younger version as well, Kingston's a key backup in that role. Yeah, obviously Nolan Ziegler, as long as he's back and ready to go, he'll be in that conversation as well. Man, that linebacker room would be stupid athletic. Like, who's the least athletic linebacker you would have on your team is probably Preston Zinter. And Preston Zinter can run. He's a good athlete as well. So that linebacker room has a chance to be special in a couple of years if developed properly. And I think it's going to be. So I'm excited about linebackers' future Notre Dame football. I think it's going to be really, really talented. And honestly, I like the move of if Jaden Osbury is legitimately getting snaps at will, I kind of like that, man. Because although he's a little bit shorter, only 6'1.5", is already up to 224 pounds. Like, he's a dense kid and he can run and he's smooth in space. So that's the modern linebacker right there. And I love that. Brandon Plesner says, biggest surprise from depth chart is Devin Ford as starting kick returner instead of Love or Price. Biggest disappointment is Salerno being backup punt returner and not Greathouse. Top takeaway is Burnham at strong side defensive end and Viper. A lot of good ones there, Brandon. The kick returner thing, I'm interested to see how that plays out. I know Devin Ford was getting a lot of the first team reps in the most recent practice. So I don't know if I would necessarily say I was shocked about it, but I guess surprise is a good word. Like, there's a lot of good talent there. So interesting to see who won that job. Biggest disappointment. Yeah, backup punt returner. I mean, again, man, we'll see. We'll see as far as like how it moves forward. I don't like to over fixate on first depth chart because we know it can change. It obviously changes week to week and things can change a lot during a season. So we shall see, man. We really shall see, but it's definitely going to be an interesting thing to follow moving forward. All I'll say though is Devin Ford is a upgrade over kick returner in a lot of years, right? Like last year, kick returner was not very good. I know it wasn't all Chris Tyree's fault, but kick return game needs to get a lot better than it was last season. A lot better. We had a question from Josh Buffo, the motivational business banker, who said, Ryan, does Deuce Knight remind you more of Tua or Malik? Tua Tagovailoa or Malik Zaire? I see both, but would like your opinion besides being lefties. Haha. I honestly, I think the lefty thing is the only thing that really reminds me of either one of them, to be honest, Josh. I mean, if I had to compare him to one or the other, I would say he's a lot more like Malik because Malik could move a lot better than Tua. Like Tua was an extender, right? Like he had good feet in the pocket, moving outside the pocket on the run. But Malik was a legitimate runner. Like Malik could run. And that's what Deuce is, man. Like Deuce can run. Obviously, they're much different body types, though. Malik and Tua are both 6'1" or less. Deuce is 6'4.5", probably right around 6'5" at this point. Brian compared him to Hendon Hooker at one point. I know Hendon is a righty compared to the lefty, and I know that's where your mind's going to the lefty side. But I really think that Hendon Hooker is a very interesting comparison because they can both run, they can both throw. I just think that their body types are a whole lot different. If I had to compare him, his style to one of those two, though, I would definitely say Malik, just because Malik had a stronger arm than Tua. Not quite as accurate, but also is a little bit more of a dynamic runner. Tua was just, I really think that Tua is a lot more like Drew Brees as far as style. Like Tua is a better mover in the pocket than Drew was, but the best of Tua and the best of Drew is getting the ball out quickly, on time, accurately. Like I just think that there's a lot of difference there, in my opinion. We had a super chat from Matt Romero. Matt, thank you so much. Quick shout out to Ryan for the solo shows. Doing a great job, my man. That is all. Matt, I really appreciate that, man. I don't know if you guys know this. I know I'm a little bit of a goofball at times, but I'm actually a very harsh critic of my own self at times. So if I'm going to go off the show after this and I'm going to think man, did I do a good job? Like, what can I do that's better? Like, how can I make this show a better thing? How can I do better in a solo format? What can I do to maybe make myself a little bit more comfortable? So I'm actually very, very hard on myself. So I appreciate feedback like this, Matt. I don't really need it as far as intrinsic motivation, but it is always nice to hear that people appreciate what you're doing. So thank you, man. I appreciate you very much. And thank you again for the super chat. It's always very, very much appreciated. Keep me employed. You know what I'm saying? Love it. Joshua Bohr. Joshua, you've had a lot of great questions today. I know you said that you don't usually get on live streams too often, man. So appreciate you very, very much. Raymond, did you send a super chat? Raymond Harton. Sorry, Raymond, I just saw your thing. You said you didn't get to my super chat. I missed where it was, and I don't have it started for some reason. Raymond, if you just want to drop the question in the chat again, you don't have to put another super chat in. Just put it in like this was my super chat, and then I'll read it, okay? My apologies. I don't see where it went. But, yeah. Yeah. Sorry about that, man. So, yeah, Raymond, just put it in the chat again if you can. Would appreciate it. Next question, though, was from Joshua. Joshua, you've had a lot of great questions today, man. I saw that you don't usually get the live shows too often, so appreciate you for being a part of it. Ryan, what's your over-under for the Navy game before Hartman goes deep? I'm going set at 2.5 plays since Navy will be loading the box. So I'll go this, Raymond. I'll say the over-under is at 1.5 passes from Sam Hartman. Number of plays, I think, could get a little bit tricky because I actually think Notre Dame's going to come out and they're going to run the ball a little bit on the first couple plays just to be like, yeah, we could do this, guys. Like, we're going to throw the ball a lot more this year because we have Sam Hartman, but like, we still can run the football at a very, very high rate. So I would say it would be, and my hat is, I'm having a hat malfunction again. If someone says something about my forehead one more time, though, promise y'all. I'm gonna shut the show off right now, man. Shut the show off right now. Just kidding, obviously. So I'm gonna say it's 1.5 passing attempts. I would set the over under at 3.5, though. If I would say, oh, Raymond, I actually got to that already, but I'll pull it back up, man, because I really appreciate the comments. So 1.5 passing plays for Sam Hartman, 3.5. I would set the over under on when his first shot is total plays. So that's where I am. Yeah, Raymond, I'll pop these up real quick, but I actually did put that super chat. That was the first one of the show, I believe. And Raymond just said, pump for the season and join the IB boards for all the latest info on the Irish. Yes, sir. Boards at irishbreakdown.com. Thank you so much, Raymond. And he also said, I love your hat. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. This is actually a Josh Downs hat, which is kind of funny. I've been doing this thing every single year where I like to try to support college athletes, obviously with like the name, image, and likeness stuff. So I buy several things of like the gear for people. So like I had Josh Downs hats. I had a Clark Phillips shirts. Actually, I had a Clark Phillips hat and shirt because I actually am pretty good friends with Clark Phillips family. I also had a DeMarvin Leal shirt. I had an Antonio Johnson shirt. I don't have any Notre Dame player stuff, though, because I haven't really seen them put up too much stuff. But, yeah, every single year I've been trying to get some players' gear, some college athletes' gear. I think that's pretty sick. So, yeah, I appreciate it, though, man. Yeah, let me flip it around real quick. I'll pop off the Josh Downs hat. I was a big Josh Downs guy. Let me pop it up real quick. See the 11 in front with the Carolina blue? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Why is it crooked, though? There we go. Yep. So got a little Josh Downs hat action, folks. Really, I need some Notre Dame guys to start getting some more gear so I can do that. So I can support them, man. I love to support college athletes. I really do. That was a great question, though, Joshua, by the way. And Raymond, thank you for both those. I appreciate you, sir. Josh Buff of the Motivation Business Banker says, if Harbaugh leaves, is Michigan gutsy enough to call Urban Meyer? Would Urban be at all interested in your opinion? Thank you, sir. Oh, man, that's such a tough question, man. Honestly, I'm going to pop this back. I'm actually not a front-facing hat guy, if you guys haven't noticed. I don't wear them too often that way. It kind of looks weird on my head, to be honest. I got a big head, so hats don't look that great moving forward. Josh, would Urban Meyer be interested in the Michigan job? First and foremost, would Michigan at least have interest? Would they at least check in? Probably. I mean, probably. But would Jim Harbaugh have interest? I mean, for the right price line, probably. Like, I mean, if Michigan called, that's a tough question, man. I need to think about that one a little bit more. My initial impulse is, if the price is right, I think I think Urban Meyer would always listen. Would Michigan pull the trigger on him? I have no idea. But we shall see, man. We shall see. I mean, that's an interesting one, though. Oh, man, it's an interesting one. I hope for Notre Dame's sake that Urban Meyer doesn't go to Michigan. I hope. I mean, one, I hate Michigan. Two, I'm not a big fan of Urban Meyer. So, like, them together would be like the ultimate antithesis of everything that is bad in the world. So, I would hate that. We had another question from Johnny S. Says, Deuce Knight has spoken pretty highly about Josh Heupel's coaching abilities. Has he commented similarly about Gino's coaching? He has. I've had several pieces Yo, Johnny. Oh, man, forget it. I'm not answering your question anymore, Johnny. I'm not answering your question after you just said that about my forehead, man. My forehead isn't even bad, folks. Like, I brush my hair to the side, okay, because I wear hats. Y'all are some haters, is all that's happening right now. But yes, Johnny, I'll answer your question, even though you were super disrespectful, man. Super. Yes, he has said a lot of great things about Gino Guidugli. I know he likes Gino a lot. Honestly, I would say that Gino Guidugli has probably had the biggest impact of any coach in this recruitment on any team, in my opinion. Like, yeah, he said a lot of great things about Josh Heupel's offense. Obviously, they put out a lot of, a lot of, they put out a lot of points last year. They put out a lot of impacts, a lot of great numbers. I mean, like they did it, right? But I think that the one thing that you need to understand is that relationships are a big thing. And I think that for me, the relationship that Deuce Knight has with Gino Guidugli is very notable, guys. Like, I think that one matters a lot to Deuce Knight. So if Notre Dame is able to land Deuce Knight, a big credit needs to go to Gino Guidugli. Gino Guidugli, Jared Parker, Marcus Freeman, and the recruiting staff. They all need that type of credit for that recruitment in particular. They need it. Because for me, I look at this and I say, you cannot convince a young man. You cannot convince a young man that is a Southern kid that all the SEC schools are coming after to come up to South Bend, Indiana, if you aren't all putting in the effort and all putting in a consistent approach to this one. This one would be a giant victory for Notre Dame, the entire coaching staff, if you're able to get a guy like a Deuce Knight. And Gino Guidugli would be on the short list of guys that you would give a big golf clap to. Like, great job, man. So yes, he needs a whole lot of credits, even if they don't get Deuce Knight. The fact that they're in this conversation is because of Gino. Like, he's a big reason for it. Archer452, who says, man, why isn't this chat pulling up? Come on. Archer, I think, oh, wait, oh no. Archer, I think I accidentally just deleted your question, man. You had a food take one. If you want to pop it back in the chat, please pop it back in. But Archer, I accidentally unstarred your question, man. I'm sorry. PKS, I know Notre Dame and Clemson have the rule, no college visits after commitment. What other university coaches follow this rule? I have no idea, to be honest with you. I saw your question. I just wanted to pop it up because you're a great listener of the show. I have no idea. All I know is Notre Dame's policies on the whole situation. I know Clemson also is one of the schools that they won't offer a player or take a player's commitment. It's one of those until they see the player in person. Like, they won't do it. Like, even if it's like a 5-star stud that wants to commit on the spot over the phone, like, they want to see the guy in person. So Notre Dame's is consistent, obviously, to what they believe in. And I believe in it too. I think it's a very good one by Notre Dame to do that. We had another question from Joshua Board. Let me see if, yeah. Joshua just had another one in there. We all know about Xavier Watts at safety and feel good about it. How is the other safety position shaking out? Has Ramon Henderson taken a step, or are some of the freshmen stepping up? So Brian's told me, and I know that Vince is in the chat, so he can probably comment on this too if he would like. But I've heard that people are feeling a lot more optimistic about the safety position than maybe they were heading into the fall. I know that Brian at least has said that Ramon has been a lot more consistent, which is a great thing. That's always the question about Ramon Henderson. It's never a question of athleticism or potential impact. It's just a question of consistency, right? So he apparently has done a good job. I know Antonio Carter has been said that he's coming along. He's going to ease it in slowly, but he's coming along. And I think the freshmen are both doing. I know that sorry, I'm just reading the chat. I know that, man, mine just went blank there. I know that they have been speaking very highly, and Brian has specifically about Adon Schuler. And we heard a lot of great things about Ben Minnick in the spring as well. So I feel like they're feeling okay about where the position is, but we'll see, obviously, as I keep moving forward. Brandon Plensner just said they didn't see Logan Sadate in person, though, before accepting a commitment technically. Brandon, I was commenting on Clemson. Clemson is one of those schools that does not accept a commitment without seeing a player. That what Notre Dame had saw was a video that they had sent him verifying his speed and his athleticism and him running routes. But I was talking about Clemson when I said that they will not accept a commitment without seeing a player in person. They want guys to visit. We had Vince. I think Vince was just talking about Faison in the chat. He said, Faison has looked good for a walk-on. He is talented. He's still buried behind some really solid receivers. So talking about Jordan Faison, of course, is playing lacrosse and now playing wide receiver as well. Vince, what's up, man? Vince, aren't you working or something, man? What are you doing in my chat right now, huh? It's my show today, sir. Kidding, obviously. Don't tell Brian. Joshua Board, who says, actually, that was the same question popped up. Let's see, we have a couple more left here, folks, and we're going to get out of here. Iris Gordon out says, have you tried South Philly barbacoa, voted best Mexican food in the U.S.? I haven't. I love me some Mexican food, man, but I have not tried South Philly barbacoa. I don't even know where that is. Is that, let me see where that is, man. The great thing about Google is that you can always find things very quickly. South Philly barbacoa. That is, 9th Street. Nice. Okay. No, I haven't. Irish 49, would you recommend? I don't know if you've been there. You just saw that it was voted that or not, but I'm always down for some Mexican food, man. I literally just had Mexican food yesterday. So, yeah. Yeah, I'm going to have to take a look at that, though. Vince, what's up, y'all? Having some fun listening to Ryan. Leave the kid alone. He looks amazing. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Vince. You're so nice, man. So nice. Oh, Irish Green Out, you highly recommend. I'll have to check it out, man. Literally, me and my wife try to have as much Mexican food as possible, man. I'm a big fan of Mexican food. I'm mostly a street taco guy. Like, I like traditional and simple tacos. Like, I'm big on chopped onion, cilantro, lime. Yes. And then obviously you season whatever you're cooking. I've been eating a lot of chorizo, but I had steak the other day. Chicken. I like chicken tacos, but like I feel like the chicken can get super overcooked very easily. But yeah. I'm a big street taco guy. Big street taco guy. A little bit of salsa verde on there. Good to roll, baby. Good to roll. I think this might be the last question, unless somebody pops another one in the chat in a second here. No cilantro? Raymond, come on, man. Come on, man. That's so disappointing. I love cilantro. Love it. Next question, and might be the final question, unless someone pops another question in. Joshua Board, Gino Gaduli is a big difference in my opinion already. Could be stipulation, but what do you think about a quarterback-centric coach has on the roster right now and in the future? I think the quarterback room right now, I'm excited about the future because I think that when you look at it, I was high on Kenny Minchie. You got CJ Carr coming in. Steve Angeli, I think has a really nice baseline as a football player. I think that we question obviously what the upside of him is, but like if he's your second, third quarterback throughout the majority of his Notre Dame career, like you're in a good spot there, right? I think that in the near future, 2023, I'm excited about Sam Hartman. I'm super excited about Sam Hartman. But moving forward, if you follow up Kenny Minchie, CJ Carr, and then you get a Deuce Knight or like a Bear Bachmeier or something, you're rolling, man. You're rolling. If you got a Deuce Knight, though, I'll put it like this, man. If you got a Deuce Knight in 2025 and Gino Gaduli is the quarterback developer that we think he can be, then dang, he's going to be good, man. Like he just needs some development. If he gets the development, he's going to be a rock star, in my opinion. So I'm very, very hopeful. Very, very hopeful. This question, I believe Thomas Lammers just said, what games are you going to this year? It's a great question. The one bad thing about doing solo shows is that you're talking continuously. So you got a little bit of, get parched at some points. So from high school perspective, actually Saturday, I'm going to be at the IMG Academy St. Joe's prep game, which is in Philadelphia. That's the home of Anthony Sacca in the 2025 class at safety. Well, he plays safety in high school, but he's being recruited as a rover by Notre Dame. They're actually playing in Ocean City here in New Jersey. So I'll be at that game. The week after, I think I'll be checking out the Bergen Catholic and Iona Prep game. Bergen Catholic's Quincy Porter, wide receiver. Iona Prep is Rowan Byrne, offensive lineman in the 2025 class. So I think I'll be checking out those games pretty shortly here. As for Notre Dame games, I will be going this year just to 2 games, I believe, as of right now. That can always change because I ended up taking a couple more trips last year than I was originally anticipating. But as of right now, I am going to the Central Michigan game at Notre Dame, and then I believe I'm going to the Duke game down in North Carolina this year. So hopefully I'll be able to go to a couple more games, but that is the plan as of right now. All right. Man, all right, let's see this game. Chris P. Bacon just said score prediction versus Tennessee State. I'll be there. Chris, wait until next week. We'll talk about that. That'll be over the course of a week type of thing. We'll talk about some of their players, the key matchups, all that stuff. Omar Alston just says your background is better than the closet hallway when your first was a baby. You're from South Jersey, but I rarely disagree. Stop hating on my New Jersey props. Good show, Ryan. Thank you so much, Omar. I appreciate you, man. Yeah, brother. Yeah, we all, New Jersey guys stick together, man. So we're good. We're good there. But yeah. I appreciate you though, and thank you so much for that super chat, man. Much appreciation for sure. Joshua Bohr says, okay, last one. What is your over/under on the point spread at halftime? I'm going to say, based on last year's, I'm going to say we have 28 points. Over/under at halftime. So are you guys, Joshua, I'm sorry. Are you asking me just for Notre Dame's point total, or are you asking me total point total? If you just pop it in the chat really quickly, because I'm going to stall here for a second because you guys don't know this is how you stall on a podcast. When you want someone to comment something, you pretend like you're saying something that's super important, but you're not actually saying something super important. You're just stalling for a second to see if Joshua could tell you if you're talking about total point total or just Notre Dame point total. Nope. Okay. 27.5 would be mine. 28 sounds actually about right to me, honestly, for Notre Dame at halftime. As a total, I would say 34.5 would be my over/under on point total in the first half. I say this, Notre Dame is favored by 20.5. I smashed the 20.5. So Notre Dame needs to cover 20.5. We'll see, though. We'll see. Great questions today, sir, by the way. We had T. Smith 0323. Ryan, I got the second pick in my fantasy. Who should I take? I'm stuck on Christian McCaffrey, Chase, or Kelsey. Man, if you can guarantee me that he's healthy, I would take Christian McCaffrey. But man, someone literally texted me yesterday and was like, I have the first pick. Should I take Justin Jefferson or Christian McCaffrey? And for the first time in my fantasy career, I told him to take a wide receiver with the first pick. Times have changed so much, man. And another thing about the running back position this year is everyone has question marks. It's Austin Eckler's a really good pass receiver, but he doesn't run the ball a ton. Christian McCaffrey's always banged up. Dalvin Cook's now with the Jets, sharing the low with Breece Hall. Josh Jacobs ran for 1,600 yards last year, but he doesn't catch the ball a ton. There's just so many fantasy question marks with running back. I'd probably go Christian McCaffrey and take the plunge, T. Smith, but I wouldn't feel great about it, though. I wouldn't feel great about it just because of the injuries the last few years. But I probably would go with Christian McCaffrey. But it's just so weird, man. It's just so weird, but shall see. Good question, though. David Jones, with Marty Biaggi being a former kicker, do you feel as good about the Notre Dame return teams as you did with Brian Mason? I mean, the return teams actually weren't that great with Brian Mason. I mean, the punt return did a good job. I know Brandon Joseph averaged about 10 yards per punt return, which was good. And they actually had a pretty good number as a team, ranked pretty high nationally. Kick return was actually not good. I mean, that would be one of the things I'm hoping for Marty Biaggi. If he could make an impact this year, it would be in the return game. I mean, you have a lot of really talented returners as far as athletes at both kick returner and punt returner. I hope that you can kind of get a little bit more out of those units overall. So I'm hoping that he does. I expect Marty Biaggi, his impact to be in field goals very early. I think that Spencer Schrader is actually going to have a really good year, and he could be an upgrade over Blake Grupe from last year. But I really think that they need to get the kick and punt return game jump started, man. Just wasn't very good last year. Wasn't very good. PK, how about you suggest we protect our coaches we want to keep a Utah contract buyout? How would you suggest we protect our coaches we want to keep? I mean, a buyout always can help. I mean, we just saw what happens, obviously, with Andy Ludwig in that situation. Honestly, protect our coaches we want to keep. Give them more money off the rip. Like, forget about contract buyouts. Like, make sure that they feel valued and you're giving them what they deserve. You know what I mean? So I think just upfront giving them what they deserve is the biggest thing for me. We had Raymond Hartman said, I heard a lot of Rowan Burnt early, but not much lately. Raymond, that's because he's done visiting for the rest of the summer, right? Like, we're into the season now. He's going to be there for the Ohio State game, and he's not necessarily in commit right now mode. So there's not really nothing to report. Notre Dame is very high on his list. I would even call him the leader right now. I mean, they're up there with them, Michigan, and Wisconsin. That's the three big schools for Rowan Burn right now. I think Notre Dame's in a great spot. It's just about now letting this thing play out and seeing when he ultimately makes the decision. But Notre Dame's in a great spot. There's just not a ton to report right now, unfortunately. This is the one bittersweet part about my job, though, folks, is that, I cover recruiting, but then when the season starts, really the recruiting that I'm talking about or I'm predicting for Notre Dame is who's visiting where, right? And then recapping weekend performers and that type of stuff. So I started to get a lot more into like team dynamic stuff in the season, which is good, but there's also just kind of like a lull in recruiting a little bit for Notre Dame. So that's just kind of where we are with that one. All right, awesome. Okay, cool. I think we're going to end it there. I just want to pop this chat up because I think it was very nice, Joshua, and I thank you so much. Ryan, you're awesome. Love everything you do and how hard you work, sir. Keep it up. It's much appreciated. And go Irish. Absolutely, sir. I thank you so much for the compliment. I appreciate that first and foremost, and I agree 100%. Go Irish. I'm going to wrap up the show there, folks. Before you leave, please, because it's a game week, it's going to be incredibly busy. Make sure you hit that notification bell. I'm telling you right now, I'll be having shows with Brian Driscoll pretty much every single day this week at 1. I will be back tomorrow. We'll be back on Thursday, and we'll also be there for a mailbag on Friday. Brian will also have his midweek rundown on Wednesday as well. IB Nation Sports Talk will be every night at 6 o'clock Eastern time, and then we'll be having the post-game show after the Notre Dame versus Navy game on Saturday. Guys, it's game week. We made it. Give me a Go Irish in the chat. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you hit the notification bell. Like this video right now. 5-star reviews are very much appreciated. Thank you all so much for joining me today on the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour. I'll talk to you all very soon next time on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.